name is Dean Thompson, and welcome to another Escape to Gaming. Today I got a fun-filled episode of a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a little while now. And one of these things that I find fascinating with gaming is that we all have different tastes in games. Many of us like, and myself included, love, the Gearbox and Rockstar games and these AAA games from just great companies that just produce one hit after the next. But there's quite often many of these somewhat average games or mediocre games that are great games. And for whatever reason, we just sink a tremendous amount of time into them. And that's what this show's about. I'm going to be calling it my top 10 guilty pleasure games. These are games you might be somewhat embarrassed to tell most of your friends that you play or that you like, but they're fun anyway, and you can sink a tremendous amount of time into them and have a good time, whether you paid full price for them or whether you got it in a discount bin at your local game retail store. They're fun games. And so what I do is I have quite a few of these actually that because I have a pretty wide range of taste in games, but I wanted to focus on ones that also had very low Metacritic scores. These are games that were really either badly panned or got mixed reviews, just kind of a mixed reception for whatever reason. So I'm going to list these top 10 games, and I'm going to tell you why I like them. And I don't expect, these are not games that I encourage you all to go out and buy, but if you feel that you like my rationale for why I like them, if you feel you have similar tastes or it might be something that you're interested in, then by all means get these games, because I think they're all fun and they all have their own merits. I'm going to take, most of these will be Xbox 360 and PS3 games, but I'm also going to include one game from the PS2 and one game from the original Xbox, kind of going back to around the mid-2000s. So, and I could certainly do a show with 30 of these games from going back to the PS1 and more PS2 games and what have you, but these are the ones I wanted to focus on. They're kind of current games that you can pick up right now and have a blast with. So again, with reviews, there's many different types. There's professional, journalists, lots of natural-born gamers that are out there reviewing games on YouTube. There's some good written reviews as well. So I like the full gambit of reviews, and again, I enjoy looking at all of them. I did a thing recently on why I review, and you can kind of see my reasoning for why I review and what I think about gaming reviews. But quite often, there'll be multiple reasons for bad reviews, and I've even seen games that are frankly good games, but the first one or two reviews that came out weren't good, and almost like dominoes, it's like it becomes fashionable to pile on the game. So, in fact, I had a friend of mine that was like the third or fourth person to review a fairly recent game that came out, a few months back, and he goes, Dean, I'm afraid to give this game a good review because I don't want the trolling in the comments. I can already see the hateful comments are going to come up and the thumbs down and all this stuff because it's not fashionable. It's kind of unfortunate that that this is the system that we have. So this Metacritic score is really unbalanced. All it takes is a couple really bad reviews and they can radically bring that score down. And that's unfortunate. So this is why I encourage people to really think for themselves. In fact, I had a friend of mine recently, loved shooters, and I was all excited. Oh, dude, if you love that one, you should play this game. He goes, well, I thought I'd steer clear of that one. After all, it's got really bad scoring on it, and reviews were actually quite mixed. And I kind of thought to myself, well, that's unfortunate. They kind of have that, attitude towards it because it's really a good game. Again, I'm just not interested. So again, these are people, I almost call them game snobs. I mean, everything's going to be the AAA games. They have to be the most very popular, to where if you suggest that you like that game, it's like, oh, really? Oh, yeah, well, of course, that's a fantastic game. And I like those games too, but the difference is it's almost like movies. I mean, there's some B movies out there that are actually really good, even though they're low-budget films, doesn't mean that they're a bad game. It's the same thing with game companies. A company like Gearbox that can absorb the losses of a Duke Nukem Forever, got horrible reviews. They can eat a game like that, and they have enough money in cloud and R&D research money. They can kind of keep the company going, keep making those titles. But some of these smaller companies can't absorb those kind of losses. That's why we're losing these great companies. We just lost Raven Software. It was one of my favorite companies, who I actually used to write letters to and tell them how wonderful I thought their games were. Of course, THQ, we all know about that. What an unfortunate. So we can, kiss the Darksiders 2 goodbye, and probably the wrestling game and a bunch of other ones. Although some of the games get picked up, thank God. I'm really happy that Homefront got picked up, and a lot of these other games that are very popular. that THQ did. Saints Row, for instance, is another one. So it's unfortunate. And, you know, like I'll suggest some of these games to people, and you'll get kind of mixed reception with them. Again, it's almost like I'll tell someone, hey, what do you think of the new Chevy Malibu? Well, I only drive Ferraris, so I don't concern myself with those kind of cars. Oh, well, excuse me, I'm sorry I brought it up, you know. And that's kind of how I feel about the games. I almost become overly sensitive to even bring these games up. But anyway, this is what this show's about. So I picked 10 games that I like going back over the last 10 years, let's say. And these are games that also have very low Metacritic scores. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to take them one at a time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what I like about the games, each one, and then I'll tell you what I think is the reasoning behind why the games have got panned or got mixed reviews. So here we go. So the first game we're going to talk about is one I just reviewed recently, is Medal of Honor Warfighter from EA. And it was made by Danger Close Games, a great development company. They actually did a wonderful job on the game. So this is a game that I already did a full review of it, but I'll just kind of mention some of the basic elements that I really thought made it a great game. Initially, I bought the game and I kind of parked it on the shelf because there were so many games at the time coming out. I just didn't have time to play it, and then I saw all these mixed reviews coming in, and they said, oh, it's buggy as hell and all this stuff. I go, well, I'll just wait. It's unfortunate. Probably he's got some issues I'll have to deal with. So I just kind of sat on the game. Well, once I played it, I actually liked the game. I thought the Frostbite 2 graphics were fantastic on it. I thought that the story elements, once you kind of got into the story and saw where it was going, it was very well done. The end of the game wrapped up nicely. It was a wonderful tribute to our armed men and women in the armed services. And I thought it was a fantastic game. It had some fantastic on-rail shooting scenes. They introduced a lot of new things with robotic drones and with a couple of really cool car levels in it. Very colorful, vibrant. I thought it was smooth. Now, I looked for the bugs in it. A couple friends of mine said they had issues. Oh, it's buggy as hell, glitches. I frankly didn't have any issues with the game. I didn't see, and I looked for them. Believe me, that's why I didn't play it for a while, because, oh God, I'm not up to playing a buggy as hell game. But once I played it, the only thing I saw in the whole game near the end, on one of the ship levels, there were 2 AK-47s, and after I killed a soldier, they all of a sudden kind of were clipping into a metal railing. But other than that, I didn't have any issues with it. There were no bugs. The first Medal of Honor game, there was a really, really bad bug. I had to redo a level like 5 or 6 times until I finally figured it out. But other than that, I haven't had any issues with Medal of Honor Warfighter. I think it's a fantastic game. I think why the game is bagged on is for 2 reasons. One, there's just this malaise of people are just jaded and bored with military shooters, especially the modern ones. We've had so many modern warfare games and so many years of Call of Duty and Medal of Honor and Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2 and Battlefield 3 that people are getting tired of them. But that doesn't mean that the game is bad. Just because people are bored with games or bored with that type of a game doesn't mean that it's bad. I think that has a lot to do with why this game was crapped on, unfortunately. And I think the other reason why is because a lot of the game reviewers, I know quite a few of them, 6 of them are good friends of mine that do it professionally for a living. Some of them are very good journalists too. And I appreciate their commentary and everything, but I know where their politics are. And frankly, I think politically the game is not popular. I think with the climate of what's going on in the Middle East and a lot of these aspects that are very gung-ho, pro-American military game right now is not popular. So that's it. If you can filter through and put the lenses on that I have and see the game for what it is, it's a very good game. You cannot pick this game apart. I just really have a hard time. It's almost illogical to pick it. If you pick this game apart, you'd have to pick apart a lot of other games too, like Battlefield 3. Now actually Battlefield 3, I saw some really bad glitches early on in the game. They weren't game-breaking bugs, but I noticed them. But it's still a wonderful game. It's realistic graphics and a great game. So Medal of Honor Warfighter is a game I really enjoy, and I've gone back and replayed a few levels, and I continue playing it, and eventually, like I said before, I'm anxious to actually try the multiplayer out. So that's my take on Medal of Honor Warfighter. Now another game that I just recently did a review on, and I'll just briefly touch on it, is 007 Legends. Now again, this game gets such horribly mixed reviews that Eurocom is now another one that's gone out of business, which is unfortunate because they have made some really good James Bond games, including the GoldenEye Reloaded game. that just came out a year or so ago, which is a fantastic game. And again, the reasons why I think 007 Legends is a good game, it virtually is a continuation of the identical gameplay and mechanics and graphics. You'd almost swear you're playing like DLC for GoldenEye Reloaded. It's that smooth. But what I like about the game is it didn't have any blood. I mean, you know, there's nothing. Not all of us like gore and blood in every game, but GoldenEye Reloaded, you shoot someone, you riddle them with bullets, and they just kind of, there's like a slight death animation. They fall over, and that's it. They slump to the ground, and God, did I shoot them or what? Well, at least in 007 Legends, they would have like not a lot of gore, but just a little bit of blood. So when you hit someone, you see like a burst of blood. And to me, it adds a little bit more realism to it. So I like that aspect of it. They introduced some really cool RPG elements where you can level up the character, you can upgrade your guns. It has tons of hidden collectibles. In the GoldenEye Reloaded, they just had these little logo icons you had to kind of hide, and you just, on each level, you shoot one or two of them, and that's it. On 007 Legends, there were tons of collectibles and really hard to find too. So, and that's something I enjoy. I'm kind of a completionist. I like to find all the collectibles and level up. So this game gave me a lot more for the money. It also had the MI6 missions, and it had the wonderful 4-player split screens for your family and friends. So to me, it virtually is illogical to dislike this game. But I think the reason why, quickly why it was panned is because, again, it's just not popular. Right now, people are bored with shooters, and it's fairly generic looking on the surface. But once you get into it, and you hear the great Bond music, which is more authentic music than even had in GoldenEye Reloaded, they brought back, all 6 different levels of these Bond missions, each one with a correlating music from the actual Bond set pieces. And then they also had the villains and characters and some of the Bond women that were also in the movie. So to me, this was, if you're a Bond fan, I would only recommend this game if you're really kind of a diehard James Bond fan. Otherwise, I mean, there's so many shooters to play, why play this one? But the game was a tremendous amount of fun. So anyway, that's my take on 007 Legends. Now, the next game is one of my favorites. This is a game that is mystifying why it's gotten such crappy Metacritic scores and just very strange mixed reviews. Some people really love the game and it's gotten some glowing reviews, and other people just hated it. And again, I think it goes back to expectations as to the franchise, but is Need for Speed The Run. I think, and I've been playing Need for Speed games since the very beginning. They came out on the 3DO, and then shortly after it came right out on the on the PlayStation original, PlayStation 1. And I had the very first one and played the living crap out of it. I loved Need for Speed. I've played almost every one. I think Porsche Unleashed is the only one. Oh, and then Need for Speed Underground, too, I haven't played. But I played the Most Wanted. I played all of the other incarnations of the original Hot Pursuit, the newer one. And it's a great game. The game has kind of evolved and changed. I also like Need for Speed Shift as well, and Shift 2. But the game is a fantastic franchise, and it's really good. It kind of captures the essence of, fast driving, being out in the open road, flying through traffic and passing cars, and kind of an action-packed driving arcade-style game. But this game was just not liked for whatever reason. But frankly, I think it's a really good game. The graphics have the Frostbite 2 engine, which are impeccable. I really think it's just gorgeous. The draw distance as you're driving across country is incredible. I mean, you can really see way down the road out in the country or through the mountains or the deserts or the plains. And that Frostbite 2 engine is able to capture these really long draw distances. So from that respect alone, it's really cool. I've actually driven several times across country, and it's a long, boring drive, but this game actually makes it fun. It makes it interesting. You're driving through the Rocky Mountains, and there's avalanches. You're going through these big boulders of snow and ice sliding around. It's intense. There's rain weather. You got going through the deserts. There's sand and dust blowing across the road where you can barely see the visibility. I mean, it's fantastic. This game captures the real feeling of being on the open road, driving at high speed, kind of a Cannonball Run type race from San Francisco to New York, and it does it very well. The story is kind of a throwaway story. The characters are a little douchey, but for the most part, it's a really good game, and I didn't even really have an issue with the story. It was a serviceable story for the action. I mean, we don't play Need for Speed games for a story. You play them by and large for the driving and the racing and the action. It has some great cop chases in it, but it mostly is about racing. And it mixed it up a little bit. You had some elements where it was more just a one-on-one. You're racing with one guy to get to the next level. And other ones you're racing with 10 cars on the road. Other ones is kind of a challenge mode where you have a time frame where you have to get to the next checkpoint or you're out of time and you have to redo that whole level. So the game had incredible challenging levels. Some of them were fairly easy. Some were actually quite hard. And it just was exciting. Really, it had some quick time events, which I wasn't a big fan of. But they did it very sparingly, and it wasn't too bad. It's an incredible game. Of all the Need for Speed games, believe it or not, it's my favorite game. I think it's a better game than the new Most Wanted, which I actually like quite a bit. But again, because it didn't meet people's expectations, and it's not like the original Most Wanted and Need for Speed Underground and all those, which I know why people like those. They like the Fast and Furious kind of story, and this game kind of departed from that, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad game. So again, it's unfortunate that it had those reviews, but if you love really cool racing games, and I have some friends recently I suggested the game to, and they feel the same way I do. My friend Frank goes, dude, this game is the best Need for Speed game I've ever played. He feels the same way, so it's unfortunate. So if you're closed-minded and you go, well, I heard that game is a bad Metacritic score, this reviewer or that reviewer put it down, well, that's unfortunate. You're really missing out on a real treat with Need for Speed The Run. Now, this next game I hesitate to even bring up, but I'll bring it up anyway, Duke Nukem Forever. Now, I'm one of these old cavemen from the old days that played the original Duke Nukem 3D, and I played multiple ports of it, PC, PlayStation 1, and in fact, I got it also on my Xbox Live Arcade and started playing it again recently. So a game I played many times and had a blast with it. And then what I really liked, even more so than that, believe it or not, was the third-person shooters that were made by the same company that did the original Tomb Raider, Lara Croft games for the PS1, was Duke Nukem Time to Kill and Land of the Babes. Both of them have got kind of mixed reviews as well. But I really loved the Duke Nukem character. I liked, just the sarcasm and the cigar chomping and beer swilling. And the game has been accused of being, not politically correct. And I can understand. In today's day and age, everyone's very sensitive. And, the depiction of women and the way that they're portrayed in the game. I validate people's concerns about that. I would not recommend this game for people that might have sensitivities in those areas. But if you're an old, knuckle dragger like me, you'll love Duke Nukem Forever. It's a really fun game. It's got some old school circle strafing elements that they had in the original Duke Nukem. It's almost like kind of going back in time. It has a lot of the same gameplay elements that they had back in the day, and I like that. So yeah, it was in development for 12 years. It's been through a tremendous amount of changes and problems, but thank God Randy Pitchford decided to roll his sleeves up and finish the game. I'm very thankful. I paid a lot of money for it, and I'd pay it again, even knowing what I do now about it. And the Doctor That Cloned Me DLC that they came out with it, which extended the single-player campaign, is actually very good and quite fun. So it's a very good game if you like Duke Nukem, and you're kind of a nostalgic, old-school FPS person like I am that played the old Doom games and the original Duke Nukem game. But again, the game has been panned because of the graphics. The graphics on some levels look substandard, and other levels they look really good. I thought the lighting in some of the areas looked really good and it had kind of an interesting stylized effect. So they brought back all of the original Octobrain aliens and the pig aliens and all of the different characters and the women, the way that they were portrayed in the original Duke Nukems, and they try to kind of bring it up to speed in kind of a modern flavor. And the game succeeds and fails on a few different levels there, but overall, I had a lot of fun. It's kind of one of those guilty pleasures that I really enjoy. So I wouldn't, push it on anyone, but if you like Duke Nukem, I wouldn't pass up on it. Now, this next game is one of my favorite shooters. This game has gotten some really strange mixed reviews. It's made by Techland, who did that worked on Dead Island. It actually has very similar graphics. The depth of focus effects they have in Dead Island are almost identical in this game, and that's Call of Juarez, the Cartel. Now, I never played the first Call of Juarez, but I played the second one, Bound in Blood, which is kind of, actually came out before Red Dead Redemption, and it's an incredible, very well crafted FPS Western game. It's really cool. It's got some cool kind of almost Max Payne 3 bullet time slow motion effects with some of the gun scenes. You can do some really cool drawing deals where you can draw down kind of a mini game, and they also had just tons of just great FPS shooting throughout the game. And the part of it took place on the last one during the Civil War and in the Old West, and it's a great story and a great game. Well, all of a sudden, you know, a couple of years ago, we get this call of Juarez, the Cartel, and I knew right off that it was a modern version. It was going to be kind of a modern cowboy thing, you know, almost like the Bon Jovi song about the, you know, the modern cowboy that's on a Harley instead of a horse. So I kind of saw that direction. I didn't have high expectations. I go, we'll see. Hopefully it has some of the same mechanics and fun that the original did. Well, actually take one of the older Western characters from Bound in Blood, and this is like his grandson or whatever now. He's this old white guy who's in the game who plays kind of a rough and tough LA cop. You also play as Eddie, who's a Hispanic male who I think is a DEA agent. And then there's an FBI, a black woman. Her name is Kim, and she also plays in this game. So what's cool about the game, Bound in Blood, you could play as two different brothers, and each one had their own attributes. Well, there's three different characters. You got the old white guy, you have the black woman, and the Hispanic male, and they all work for different agencies, but they're forced to work together to kind of nail down these drug cartels coming across the border from Mexico that are coming up into Los Angeles and across the border down the deserts and creating all kinds of havoc. And that's what your task is. But what's interesting about the story is that they're actually crooked cops. They all have some a monkey on their back, in other words, and there's things that are bothering them. So they're all looking for ways to do their job and bust these guys. But at the same time, they're lining their pockets. They're looking for ways to try to see if they can get something for themselves. And I thought it was kind of interesting, actually. I actually liked the story and the characters. And some people thought the characters were hollow, there's no story at all to it. But I actually found it quite interesting, and I actually wanted to see how the game ended. The end of the game, you actually have a couple different options as to how you can change the end of the game. As you get closer to the end, you finally have to make some choices, and you'll have a special cutscene. There's, I think, 3 different endings, depending on how you decide to play it. And I've actually experimented with all of them, and it's a lot of fun. But the game is a fantastic urban shooter, which you don't see that many of. I mean, typically it's, you know, World War II, or it's modern warfare, you know, the end of the world, Michael Bay type things. Or we had the Bound in Blood in the Old West. Well, this is kind of neat because you're dealing with, you know, drug dealers and, you know, kind of, you know, urban areas and kind of South Central Los Angeles, real kind of gang-ridden areas. And you're these tough cops and DEA agents. You're going up into the Sierras where they've got a bunch of pot farms, and you got to find this drug dealer, blow up, burn their stash, and burn all of their supplies, and then pin it on this other drug and start kind of a drug war so you can get to the bottom. It's got some really interesting story twists in it. But what's cool about the game is you can play as each of these 3 characters. They each have their own version of how the game is played out. So some of them, it's almost identical. Some levels are identical. You all play the same, but each one has their own weapons. Like the cowboy dude, the LA cop, his thing is you know, 6 shooters and handguns. So he's really good at those. So when you zoom in with a handgun, you get, you know, a little bit better accuracy, more stopping power. Eddie, the Hispanic guy, is really cool. One of my favorite guys to play. His thing is SMGs. He's really good with like twin Scorpions or MAC-10s or whatever. And it's just epic. He's my favorite character to play because I love using machine guns. And so he'll kick a door open and you go in there in slow motion with machine guns going off in both hands. It's awesome. And then Kim, the black gal, she's really good with a sniper rifle. There's some levels later where it really comes in handy to have her attributes. And so her zooming ability is even better. Her aim is a little bit more steady. So I thought it was really cool the way they introduced these gameplay elements that correlate with each of these characters. That's why I think it's an exceptional game. It also has some excellent freeway and LA driving scenes where you're, you know, driving a Hummer down the street, leaning out the window, and you're shooting at these drug dealers. Their cars are exploding, careening off the road, flipping end over end. They're shooting back at you. It's fantastic. Another one are in kind of a really crummy part of LA trying to get the hell out of there. and there's roadblocks are coming out of the woodwork at you. You just got to get out any way you can and get onto the freeway. Just barely missing trains, just swerving around roadblocks, spraying bullets, taking out all the windows. It's very action-packed, kind of an 80s throwback to an 80s action film. That's why I like Call of Juarez, the Cartel. It's a very cool, action-packed game. It's very exciting. They really have some great on-rail sections. You get some, heavy M60 machine guns taking out helicopters, stuff like that. It's very cool. It's, the graphics are not everyone's cup of tea, but they aren't bad. There was a little bit of texture pop in areas and things like that that I'd noticed, but it didn't take me out of the experience. I had a lot of fun. In fact, I put more time into that than the first Black Ops 1, which I played all the way through, replayed it on the Hardened Edition, and had a lot of fun going after those achievements. But I put in probably twice as much time in Cartel, and it's not a AAA game, but it's a great game. So unfortunately, because I think the game got bagged on because they just went too far, deviated too far from the Old West. The last one was well received. This one's not. So maybe they should have made a new IP and called it, the DEA, Cartel Wars, or I don't know, something else. Maybe then it would have sold better. And there's been some controversy over it being hitting some nerves and being too racist. But I thought the fact that you could play as a black woman, as a Hispanic male, or as an old crusty white guy, I thought was cool. It gave you a variety. So to me, I don't see why it's an issue. I really don't see the racism in it. The way they portrayed some of the gangbangers and the hoodies and the MAC-10s and more of the ghetto life in LA. And I've been through those parts of LA, and I know exactly what Watts and Compton and Hawthorne and all those areas are like. And it portrayed it actually fairly well, to be honest with you. So I think it's a great game. If you want a really good shooter, play Call of Juarez, the Cartel. Now the next one's another game that's is controversial, and that's Kane and Lunch 2. Jeff Gertzman, went through a lot of problems with the infamous review that he did of the first Kane and Lunch, and then he reviewed the second one and was a little bit more careful and diplomatic how he worded it, but he didn't care for that one a whole lot either. And I love Jeff and his reviews. I think they're really good, and I didn't agree with him, frankly, on either one of the Kane and Lunch reviews entirely, but I validate some of his points on it. But anyway, Kane and Lunch 2 is another kind of, if you ever watched the movie The Town that came out recently, or the movie Heat, the Michael Mann movie, with these just epic cop shootouts over the hood of the cars and taking on tons of cops, and just a really high-octane kind of action shootouts, you can't beat Kane and Lunch 2. They really capture the realism of it. And they do it through these kind of, they try to make this almost a home movie realistic portrayal of the gunfights. Everything's kind of a jerky camera movements and lots of washed out lens flare and interruptions in the digital signal of the camera. And it can be a little annoying at times when you're trying to focus and shoot, but it has a very gritty, realistic style to it. What they do have, to the game's credit, is you can shut off the motion of the camera where it's moving all over the place. So that you still have some of the grain and filters and the lens flare effects, which are still there. It can be a little obtrusive at times, but at least you can steady the motion, which I thought was a nice option. Supposedly the Japanese version of this game, they have a setting to where you can play it without any of the lens flare or any of these weird effects, which would be kind of interesting to see. I don't know if I'd be able to get a copy of that and play it on my console, but I'd be kind of curious to see how that plays out. But again, it's another really cool, epic, over-the-top shooter action game, third-person shooter. It's somewhat standard third-person shooter gameplay and cover system, and it can get a little repetitive as you get near the end. Like Max Payne 3 or anything else gets a little repetitive too, but it doesn't mean that they're bad shooters or bad games. But I really like the characters. Yeah, they're not real likable characters. And in the Call of Juarez, the Cartel, the characters in that one weren't overly likable either, as are crooked cops and DEA agents. But there's something about these kind of crime dramas and thrillers that I find are fascinating. And Kane and Lunch 2, I thought, captured that well. They have a really cool multiplayer component too, where it's a cops and robbers deal. And you can go in and you pull these heists, and one of the crew members can turn on the other ones and take all the money, and it's really neat. So they brought to the table some new multiplayer elements that they don't have in any other shooter. So I actually give Kane and Lunch 2 some high marks. I went back and replayed that a second time. I put more time into that one also than I have some of these AAA games. So that says a little bit of something about the game, that it's fun, if you like those kind of games. Now the next game that I'm going to talk about is one I picked up actually just a few months ago before 007 Legends came out. So I wanted to play Bloodstone and another one called .007 Quantum of Solace, which kind of picks up where the Casino Royale and the Quantum of Solace movies left off. In fact, they should almost call it the Casino Royale, because half of the game is actually the Casino Royale part of the movies, and the other half is kind of segueing into the sequel, which was the Quantum of Solace movie. So it actually is really cool. You get almost 2 movies in one game. Now what they did is they took, it has the Call of Duty engine. It even looks like Call of Duty. Even the graphics of the wording on the screen, everything has a lot of that COD look to it and style to it. You know, it's an older game. The graphics aren't up to date with a lot of the killer shooters that we have now. But I found it to be a really good game. I was quite surprised. Again, I almost passed on it because of some of the reviews, but then I saw a couple good reviews of it, and I said, this looks like a fun shooter. I've actually loved the game. In fact, I played it. It took me 2 nights to get through it, and I had a blast with it. Went back through and replayed a couple of the levels. They also it's a first-person shooter, but it also has some stealth elements, which are really cool for a first-person shooter, and it's all Bond. They have a great portrayal of Daniel Craig and of Judi Dench, also that's in the game. So some of the characters that were in the movies are also in the game, and the voices, and I really like that about the game a lot. So I think that again, people just get bored with shooters. They play so much Call of Duty, it's like, oh god, another Call of Duty clone, so they quickly dismiss the game. But it really is a lot of fun. If you love Bond, I would recommend it. You can get the game. I think I paid like $8 for it or something, really cheap. So it's a great game. It's one that I would pick. If you love Bond, like first-person shooters, and you're kind of very familiar with Call of Duty, you could jump right in and have a blast with Quantum of Solace. I really don't know what everyone's issue was with the game. I thought it was really good. Very colorful set pieces, some really cool rooftop levels, and down in these Venice canals, and I just thought it was neat. It really had some really good shootouts and sniping sections and stealth sections. But, each has their own taste in games. So, I understand if it's not everyone's cup of tea. Now, the next game that I like, I'm almost afraid to say I like it. It's got really bad scores, and it's got very mixed reviews, and I can validate some of the complaints definitely on this particular game. But it's called Soldier of Fortune Payback. I think I paid, like $7.50 or $8 for it or something. Really cheap. And it's a really fun guilty pleasure game. It's one of these overly gory games. And again, I like the games that have a lot of visceral action and gore. I mean, people will look down their nose at a game like this or a game like Manhunt, but then on the same token, they'll love, a new port of, or the reboot of Mortal Kombat with the ridiculously graphic nature of that, which for whatever reason they'll give that game a pass, but they'll pick apart Manhunt or a game like Soldier of Fortune Payback. But this game, you're just shooting everything in sight. You shoot someone's head, you can blow their head off. You can literally sever off their arms with an M16. Blood's just a ridiculous amount of blood all over the place. And that's what makes it cartoony. It's almost fun. It's like one of those guilty pleasure games. You have a blast playing it. It has some very frustrating level design in it. I think the level design is not bad, but the AI goes from dumb to really tough AI at times, and it can be a little bit of a challenge. So I validate some of the frustration that people have with that. The graphics are kind of average looking, but the gun models look really good, and the sound design is good. The music is serviceable in it for the most part. The game kind of lacks a soul. It doesn't really have a good, captivating story to it, but it's just one of those kind of just fun games. You want to throw something in and just have a blast shooting the living hell out of everything in sight, and epic explosions and blowing stuff up, and really cool elevation changes. We're up high, shooting down low, or shooting up at these rope bridges and stuff. I really like it. It's had some neat aspects to it. Almost, again, kind of a throwback to the old FPS game. So if you want to have kind of a fun game, it doesn't cost you that much at all. Soldier of Fortune Paybacks, for whatever reason, kind of, like I said, embarrassed to say I like it, but it's a fun game. Now this next game is going back to the old days. This is one of the last games that was made for the PlayStation 2, and also at the very beginning of the Wii cycle was also ported for the Wii, and now you can get, in fact I just got it 2 nights ago for the PC in the uncut version, which is really cool. But this game, Rockstar has been under a lot of controversy because of their violence with the Grand Theft Auto 3 series. They did the San Andreas game. They had that whole hot coffee fiasco with the hot coffee, hidden elements in the game that people could mod the game and see, a bunch of hardcore adult content in it, whatever, which I haven't seen. But Like, Rockstar has a lot of those really kind of edgy adult themes in their games. And again, they're mature games. They're not for kids. So, when I go over and even see some of, my relatives or younger nephews playing it, I'm like, you guys really shouldn't be playing this. And it's fun to watch them play it for a while, but they're not games for kids. But, people forget that. Mothers are out buying, their kids these M-rated games. But anyway, Manhunt, the first one was intense. In fact, I'll be doing a review at some point on Manhunt 1 and 2. But Manhunt 2 was actually a refinement over the first one. The story wasn't quite as good and captivating, I don't think, as the first one. But the second one, they took a completely different route with the story. They introduced completely different gameplay mechanics to it. And they kind of refined the stealth elements and the controls, I thought, quite a bit. Actually for the better. It's a very violent game. It's very gory. You get that kind of a satisfaction doing these visceral kills. There's a really interesting story and a psychological twist through the whole game. It has a really trippy ending. This is another game where you just want to play it all the way to the end to see how the story evolves. Rockstar is great with the stories, and Manhunt 1 and 2 are fantastic. But this game I picked out to talk about because it got a very low Metacritic score and very mixed reception review. Very controversial game. I love the game. I remember I drove my Camaro at 130 miles an hour down to my Best Buy where I lived at the time. I mean, hauled ass to go get this game. I couldn't wait to get it after work, and I was so excited to play it. But anyway, when I got home and put it in, I think it took me 2 nights to get through the whole game. I was just glued to it, and then I put it on the hardcore mode and replayed it, where they removed some of the things on the HUD and what have you. But it's a really interesting game with different ways you can play it. It has a lot of environmental kills, which you're seeing more and more of in the game. In fact, Sleeping Dogs has a lot of really cool environmental kills. They're almost like a complete copy of what was in Manhunt 2. So the game was supposed to have an adult-only rating. There's a lot of, I could go on for an hour, and I will be reviewing Manhunt 1 and 2, and I'll get into more of this. But the game, they had to take out over 32 elements of the game and change the game substantially. Take out some decapitations out of it. A lot of the executions now had some fuzzy stuff over the screen, although the new PC version, they've removed all that, I guess. And then some of the executions they completely removed. They were just way too hardcore. So, and that's fine. I mean, I can enjoy the game the way it is, and even with some of those changes. But again, it's this oversensitivity to people's feelings. Children should not play these games. They really are hardcore games, and they're for adults only. But the first one, kind of like the 8mm with Nicolas Cage, is just this fear that's instilled in these games. You're thrown into these world where you're being hunted down like an animal. And the fear that it brings you is kind of a real return to survival horror and kind of an urban setting. Very unusual. That's why I like they're really kind of a hybrid stealth games and horror action, survival horror type games. It's really hard to categorize, but I love Manhunt 2. They had a lot of refinements. I like you can shoot the lights out. You can quietly execute people, hide the bodies. You can find more violent front door approaches or back ways in. Environmental kills or quietly kill them. Again, as you get in there, you can hold out for a more gruesome execution as you're falling behind someone. As long as they don't turn around, the longer you wait before you kill them with whatever weapon or your hands, whatever you have, the worse the animation is. And it's very, very graphic. But it's a fun game. It's just one of these real guilty pleasures. I've put a tremendous amount of time into the Manhunt games, and I really enjoy them quite a bit. It's very colorful. It's very fear-filled. The music, Rockstar really captured a real element of fear through the whole game. And there are times where I almost dreaded turning the console on and playing it. It was really that intense. So if you want a really intense horror survival action / stealth game, you can't beat Manhunt. And Manhunt 2, I think, is even better in many ways than the second one. First half of the game, a lot of melee weapons. The second half of the game, you get a lot more guns, and the gunplay is just hardcore. I mean, you hold out for the headshots, and it just shows some really hardcore people's brains being just splattered all over the wall and sliding down the wall and stuff. It's just over the top. So if it's a real visceral, violent, Rockstar action game you want, you really can't beat and you can get them real cheap now. You can't beat the Manhunt games. The game is very controversial. It was hated by a lot of people, and I mean, there's one reviewer I know personally that did a lot of moralizing on the game instead of really talking about the game. Was talking about the condition of men today that would even play something like this. But it's a fun game, And again, I wouldn't hurt an animal, let alone a human being. So, people have this misconception of violence in video games. To me, it's fantasy. Whether it's a Mortal Kombat game or it's a driving game where you're Burnout Paradise and you're smashing into cars and forcing them into these, demonic car crashes and explosions. It's all violence. It's acted out in a fantasy capacity, and I really don't have an issue with it. So I highly recommend Manhunt 1 and 2, but the second one is quite good, and I wouldn't pass on it. Now, the last game was the reason why I bought my Xbox, and it's Land of the Dead, Road to Fiddler's Green. I remember going with my wife. We actually saw I love George Romero and the Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. Well, he'd been working on the screenplay for years for his follow-up of Day of the Dead. It was going to be called Land of the Dead, Road to Fiddler's Green. It took place in Pittsburgh, and this time they kind of quarantine off the whole downtown area, and it's separated with waterways, and it was where the haves and have-nots. And almost George Romero did kind of a contemporary look at society, and had kind of some interesting metaphors with where society is today with the haves and have-nots. And I like that about the film. The game is loosely based on the movie, but it captures the essence of the real zombies, long before Left 4 Dead and all these other great zombie games that we love now, and Dead Rising and these other ones, which are great games, a lot of fun. But this is kind of the old school Romero zombies. They're a lot more slower with the moaning and groaning, the way they come at you. But this game, virtually almost triggered me into a psychotic episode. The first night I played it, I had to shut the game off for over a week. It was just that intense. It really got to me. It has this creepy electronic music, synthesized music through the whole thing. You start off in the middle of, you're kind of a farmer, and you're in your house, and the sun's kind of setting. You look out the window, you see this guy just standing there. You don't really even know he's a zombie. So it kind of goes through the perception of, you've never seen a zombie in your life, and all of a sudden you're introduced to them. You don't know where they're coming from or why it's happening. And he tries to get to the city. That's what the whole story of Land of the Dead, Road to Fiddler's Green is this farmer. And then once he gets to the city, there's a whole bunch of new problems there. And he meets these other characters, and you help them, and they help you. And it's really an interesting game. Very stylized. Very simplistic graphics. The shooting mechanics are very clunky and kind of odd at times, but as you increase the difficulty setting, it takes more to kill the zombies, and I notice the zombies come at you even faster, which is cool. Not as fast as, Left 4 Dead, with running at you like, Joe Namath, a football player, but it's really more realistic. To me, zombies should be slower and more in keeping with the George Romero canon that we all know. But and I love the Left 4 Dead games too, but I actually prefer the more slower ones. And this game really captured a survival horror, the best survival horror I've seen since the very first and the second Resident Evil. I really was just mesmerized by the game. I just almost was afraid to finish it at times, but I finished it, and then I replayed it on a harder level, and then replayed my favorite levels over and over. It's really intense. In fact, I just discovered that you can still get it on PC and Gamersgate.com, and I'm going to be getting that pretty soon, as I just got Manhunt 2. So I'm very anxious, and I'll probably be doing a review of that. This game has the lowest Metacritic score, 32. In fact, I said before Dead Island came out on a Facebook forum, on the new Dead Island Facebook page, I put on there, oh yeah, this will be the coolest thing since Land of the Dead, and someone goes, oh yeah, I just researched that. Yeah, it's got a very low Metacritic score. I don't think I'm going to look at that one. And I go, it's a shame, because it really is a very good game. So it's got some mixed reviews. GameSpot, one of the earlier reviews that I actually read and saw on GameSpot was on this game. And it was after the fact. So when I bought the game, I didn't know whether it was good or bad. I loved it personally, and I thought it was highly intense. I went out and bought my regular Xbox just to play this game, and it was well worth the purchase, and played it for years before Left 4 Dead. But actually, I'll read the review. Part of the review, he had two quotes from it I thought were interesting. One of them, he goes, there is almost a pseudo-brilliance to the sheer awfulness of Land of the Dead, which I thought was an interesting quote. And then he kind of wrapped up his review, and he stated this. He goes, this is either one of the most avant-garde pieces of gaming artistry to ever find its way to the retail market, or the absolute worst game of the year. So I thought that was an interesting way to look at the games. It tells you that you could probably take the game a couple different ways. Again, it has some clunky gameplay elements, but I can't recommend it enough if you like survival horror. So one of those games where you're almost afraid to recommend it because of the low scores and mixed reviews it has. There's actually some interesting playthroughs you can watch on YouTube on it. Kind of get a feel for it and see if it's something you like. Again, you're playing an older game that was designed for the regular Xbox, and it's very dated by today's standard, but it was an incredible game. This is one of the first guilty pleasures games that I really enjoyed in the 2000s, was Land of the Dead, Road to Fiddler's Green. So I hope you thought this little rant of my top 10 guilty pleasures gaming was interesting, and I kind of, again, just want to give you some of the basic reasons why I like each and every one of them and what I think people's issues are with the games. But we all have our favorites, and you'll find that there's some wonderful games if you give them a chance. Don't be afraid. If someone recommends a game to you, take a few minutes and listen to them. It only takes a minute or two to watch a few YouTube videos and just kind of see if it's something you like. Someone recommended Stranglehold to me recently, which I got. Actually, it was $8. I got it, and I got the special collector's edition with a behind-the-scenes DVD in mint condition. I had a 50% off coupon. I got it for $4. I don't even know what the Metacritic score in the game is, but it's awesome. It's a fantastic game. Another one that I kind of passed on. What is it? Oh, another Hong Kong film, and it didn't have enough karate for me. I think that's why initially I passed on it. But they captured the essence of those Hong Kong cinemas and those epic shootouts. And these are great games. Another one is Wet, and other interesting games that have some interesting dynamics. Some of them weren't well received, or the gameplay's kind of odd or clunky at parts, but there's many of these gems out there, and don't be afraid to play them. And frankly, most of these games that I've mentioned today, you can get for a real song, really cheap. So don't be afraid of average games. Don't be afraid to even admit that you like them and have fun with them, because they are fun. You can have a blast with any of these games. So anyway, I just wanted to bring these to you. I thought it was kind of a fun segment, kind of giving you an inside perspective as the kind of twisted games that I like and my reasons why. So thanks again for watching. I've been watching another Escape to Gaming. Stay tuned. I'm going to have some more rants and more reviews coming soon, including some of these older classics, which I like, and I'll tell you why. So thanks again, and enjoy your games, guys.